Thank you, Sourav and Dalbert, for inviting me to speak here. But more importantly, I think for making this occasion to talk about this issue about including children with special needs, especially in the area of foundational literacy and numeracy. FLN, as you know, is almost at the top of the town now. Everybody seems to be doing something or the other on the FLN space, and it's important that we also situate this discussion on inclusion within the larger FLN context. And similar to Reed, who spoke in the beginning, Room to Read is also an organization who have largely worked in the FLN space. And again, we are not an organization who have expertise in actually dealing with children with disabilities or any kind of exclusion. But we believe as a strategy that makes a lot of sense. And I'll just talk a bit about that, I guess. I am reminded about, say, the year 2010, when, that was the time when the developmental organizations and funding organizations across the world were just waking up to the idea of FLN. And it required almost convincing every stakeholders, right from the teacher to the policymaker to the government officials, on why FLN is needed. And what followed was a lot of research and evidence generation, whether it be from the Matthew effect of learning to return of investments and all kinds of studies to investing in FLN is the best thing to do. And I think today probably is an opportunity to think in similar lines for inclusion as well. So that was 2010. 2021 you have the Nippon Bharat, which is probably the first policy which focused the talk about FLN, and thankfully it says universalization of FLN, right, which means all children to have FLN competencies by 26-27. And quite naturally, we see almost every government taking up some policy initiatives, some programs, implementations towards strengthening foundation learning and learning competencies. But it's also true that, as he was mentioning, we see that there's a huge inter-class disparity. And you scratch the surface of those big scores and the aggregate assessments, you go down to any classroom, you see huge disparities exist. And this is something which is really going to affect or impact our chances of achieving FLN goals as we had thought that we would. But once you look at why these disparities exist, obviously one thing that we all know, that every child learns differently, and many times, especially in large-scale programs, you have an uniform instructional approach. And obviously when you have an uniform instructional approach targeted toward the larger portion of the class, there is always possibilities that certain children are not going to learn at the level that others would. And this might include, even children whose home languages are different from what the school's languages. And there are various causes of exclusion, of course. The second major reason of disparities is, I think, as we've been talking about, is children with special needs. And there are two issues here. One is at the first instance, identification itself. And if you go to schools, you find a large number of children, especially with ADHD, low vision, low hearing. They are not even identified, not even acknowledged as children who need special, interventions. So as a result, and as Gagan was mentioning, that there are 15% of the students who have special needs. I think our identification mechanisms have not even captured 1% of them. So obviously there's a huge way to go there, huge long way to go there. And even when you know, even if you have identified the children, many times teachers do not know how to deal with them. That's the second part of the challenge. And as a result, there's always a section of the children who are in the classroom, they exist in the classroom, but the special needs are not taken care of. The third reason for disparities, which Room to Read as an organization strongly believes in, is a lack of dignity of the child. And this is coming across very strongly in our work. I mean, as we go to the field, as we as an organization work very closely in the schools, and we are noticing this not only in India, across the world, I would say. Marginalization and various levels of marginalization, that's very real in the classroom. Children are, regularly either discriminated or bullied or abused, basis anything, basis gender, maybe caste, maybe class, maybe poverty, and just disability just adds on to a layer of that. And this, I think, is very critical, because the system really doesn't have the means to either acknowledge this problem or then to solve it. And I think that's creating a situation where every classroom you go to, there is always a section on the children who are left behind. And imagine any child who is constantly getting humiliated because of whatever reason. She loses the confidence, she loses any interest to take part in the classroom processes, and very naturally she would never learn. So, should children be included in FLN processes? Yes, of course, absolutely. It's not a question of equity alone, it's also a question that if 30% of your kids are not learning, you'll never be able to achieve the FLN goals that you're talking about. So it makes real practical sense to include everybody, otherwise everybody is going to fall behind. So I guess that's definitely the pitch, I would say. In terms of what needs to be done, as I was mentioning, at a policy level, it does make sense to generate more evidence to influence policies around inclusive education. But also, inclusive education of children with special needs, these are not new topics. I remember back in the early 90s when the district primary education program started, these were things all talked about then. And over the years, I think we have had enough good practices, enough things that we know about how children can be included. And this is one area where the private sector has done a stellar job in actually getting a lot of kids included in their processes. So there's a lot that can be learned. Somewhere I think the technicalities of how children need to be included, we kind of know that. And it's easy to solve. What is more difficult is the mindset issue. The mindset of getting the child to participate in the classroom, to feel included, to feel respected, to feel loved, that is something I think which needs much more effort. And as he mentioned, that obviously starts with teachers, because they're the first caregivers in that sense. So how do you really move the needle from what skills and competencies the child needs to learn to how the child needs to be treated in the classroom? Not what the child should be taught, but how the child should be taught. So these movements are very critical to actually create an inclusive environment in the classroom. And then of course beyond the child, you also have to engage with the larger system, with the parents, the students themselves. Sometimes there's bullying happening within the classroom, within the peers, which how to make kids more empathetic to the needs of these children. These are things that I think we all need to work on, and these are more difficult than just the technical part of including a child. I will stop here. I hope the discussions today would really show more light on these things. Thank you.